Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie if you're new here, and today I'm so excited to be sharing with you Cirque's Falling in Lust collection. So this indie sleaze inspired collection includes a couple of jellies, a bright cream polish, and then a few kind of topper polishes. So I'm super excited to get into the swatches. I will have some comparisons, and I also will have a note at the end talking a little bit more about their new wide brushes, which I'm not sure if you can tell the difference in the caps, but we have a couple of those. So just stay tuned for the end. Let's just get into the swatches. The first polish is Nirvana, which is a bright yellow cream polish. So this is basically a very primary yellow. Maybe there's a hint of warmth to it in certain lighting or swatch photos that I've seen, but to me it looks like a true primary yellow. So formula-wise, this was actually somewhat decent. It's not super thin or watery, but obviously the formula is not helped by the skinny brush, so it definitely is going to need a second coat at least to even everything out. So on the second coat, it does give me basically 100% opacity, but as you will see once I finish it, it's just not totally even. But I didn't think it was enough to do a third coat because it probably would have looked a little bit more lumpy. So I would say the formula is a little annoying, which can be expected with yellow creams, but more than anything, it's probably just the skinny brush that just doesn't help with it. I think it self-levels okay, but I think I would recommend doing 3 thinner coats. The next shade is Eros Jelly, which is a violet jelly shade that has a super glossy and translucent finish. So if you don't know, jelly polishes are intentionally sheer so that even when you build them up in 2 or 3 coats, you'll still typically see your nail line. So I personally really love jellies during the warmer months, especially because they just have that kind of like glossy candy-like effect. And I'm actually really excited about these darker ones in this collection. They're so fun for layering glitters and shimmers and just doing these blended jelly gradients that I love doing. So I'm excited to use these in some of those looks. But anyway, back to this polish and the formula. I decided to keep the skinny brush to show you how it would apply. And as you can see, it is a little finicky to get really even coverage. There are some spots on my nail that are a little darker than others. Jellies also tend to have like a thinner, almost watery kind of formula. So some pooling can happen at the sides of your nails, or like you might be able to tell closer to the base of my nail. But I did my best to just try and do as even of application as I could with the skinny brush. Some shades definitely work better than others, but yeah, anyway, I layered it in 3 coats here, and as you can see, it definitely looks pretty dark, but it is not fully opaque. There is definitely still some squishiness, and when you look close enough, you still can see my nail line, but I really do love the color that this builds up to. I think it's just so beautiful. Next up, we have NSFW Jelly, which is a black jelly polish. So I actually swapped out the brush to their new wide brush, which you'll see here. And I was super excited since I knew it was going to make application so much easier, but I ended up actually struggling specifically with this shade since the bristles are black and you just can't see how much polish is on your brush. So I initially just didn't really grab anything on my first coat, as you saw. But even still, I just found that this was way more sheer than I was expecting. So I had to go over it a couple times to get it really even, and it does give it a nice smoky effect, but I know so many people might just hate this, especially on 1 coat. On 2 coats, it does get a bit deeper, but you can definitely still see through to my nail line. And as you can see, I think in the middle, I just didn't have the best application, or it's just like the pooling taking effect. So I went in with a 3rd coat to try and just even it out. And I also ended up holding my finger kind of like upside down, so that way the pooling just gravitate towards the center of my nail instead of at the side walls. But yeah, I know it looks opaque here, but it is not. It still, again, has that squishy kind of effect. So I still could see through to my nail line. It was very faint, but overall, I really like the effect of this polish. I think black jellies are so cool, but this one definitely was super sheer. Again, I would recommend going in with thinner coats, so next time I probably would need 4 coats instead of 3. The next polish we have is All Nighter, which is described as a metallic confetti glitter in a clear base, and I'll actually be layering this over NSFW Jelly. So this actually has a mixed metals type of finish where the metallic flakes are gold, silver, and rose gold. I know some people absolutely hate mixed metals, but I feel like these don't clash as bad as you would expect them to. They all have a very similar tone that makes them blend in with each other, if that makes sense. So hopefully you can see how they stand out against the darker base. And as you probably saw, I was able to mainly do 1 coat, but I did have to dip back into the bottle just for the edge of my nail. I wanted to try and sandwich this, but I don't think using NSFW jelly was the best idea since it's just so incredibly sheer on 1 coat. So it ended up not really changing anything. So that was kind of a fail on my end, but I still love the look of this metallic confetti glitter over the black. I think it's just such a vibe. Next we have Bitten Jelly, which is a deep magenta red jelly. So I also swapped the brush in this one since, you guessed it, it's my favorite in the collection. I found this one just had great application where it was the most even on 1 coat compared to the other jellies, especially NSFW, which also was using the wide brush. This one is very pigmented, but still completely translucent. Like you can see right through to my nail line, which I know might not be the most flattering for some people, but I always think layering jellies in 2 coats at least, or throwing a glitter in between them just helps to cover any of that up if it bothers you so much. So I did a 2nd coat as you see here, and it did deepen the color a little bit, but it didn't do much to cover up my nail line any more than on the 1st coat. So this is really one of those sheer kind of glassy jelly polishes. I feel like Cirque has released other jellies before where they're almost a little bit crelly and achieve more opacity to cover your nail line, and this is not one of those. So I did a 3rd coat, and as you can see, my nail line is still very much apparent, but it doesn't really bother me too much, I think because I just love the color. But I was also a little disappointed by the color because I mainly did the 3rd coat to try and match what was in the bottle, but the bottle was just this really deep red and you just get a lot more magenta on your nail. The last polish in this collection is Chemistry, which is a sheer gray magnetic polish. So you can definitely build this up on its own to make it look like what's in the bottle, but I actually wanted to share this layered over Bitten Jelly because the 1st coat is so sheer that the gray metallic kind of base doesn't really affect the color too much. And I've just always been so curious to layer a magnetic like this in between a jelly. So here I am topping it off with another coat of Bitten Jelly to really encapsulate the magnetic pigment, and it just kind of looks like its own custom magnetic polish. So I think a polish like this is super cool and super handy to have if you don't have one already. Now moving on to comparisons, we're going a little out of order and starting with NSFW Jelly next to Memento Mori, which is Cirque's 1 coat black cream. So next to an opaque black, you can see that NSFW is just a touch lighter, like a very, very dark gray. So it is going to deepen in color with the more coats that you do. Next up for All Nighter, I wanted to show it next to Silver Lining, which is Cirque's silver metallic flake topper. So you can better see what's going on in All Nighter where it's not just one metallic shade. I'm also going to be showing it next to Sunkissed, which is their gold flake topper. Don't mind my tiny bottle. But just to show you how muted the gold is in All Nighter. Sunkissed is much more of an intense yellow kind of gold. So again, I really love All Nighter because it's just so unique, especially to my collection. For Nirvana, I wanted to compare it to Honey from Zoya, which was re-released last summer. So in the bottle, they might look nearly identical, but Honey definitely has a lot more warmth to it and also a subtle shimmer, but let's ignore the shimmer and just focus on the color. So here you can see that Nirvana is a little bit brighter and more of that primary yellow. Like, I would say there's maybe more white to it, but it's not really chalky or pastel in any way. Next for Eros, I wanted to quickly show it next to Berry Jelly, which I thought would be more similar, but it is way lighter than Eros. And I know it kind of looks a little pinkish here, but it's definitely a light purple. For Bitten Jelly, I wanted to show it next to XOXO, which is Cirque's hot pink jelly, and you can see just how bright and, well, pink it really is. Here it is also next to Lucky Jelly, which was released earlier this month, and this builds up to be a true primary red. So I wanted to show Eros, Bitten, XOXO, and Lucky Jelly all next to each other because I feel like they make a pretty good gradient. I guess Lucky Jelly is kind of the odd one out here, but Bitten Jelly is pretty much the dead middle shade that you would get if you mixed XOXO and Eros Jelly. So yeah, on one coat they kind of look pretty similar, and on two coats you can definitely see the differentiation between them. I feel like Bitten Jelly is looking a lot more purple here than it was on my nail, where the magenta was like really pulling through, but I guess that might just be from it being on my skin tone or against my skin tone and not swatched on like a white swatch wheel. But either way, I just wanted to show these just to show how the colors build up and to show you that they're not dupes at all. But they are all so beautiful, and you have to let me know which one is your favorite, but also let me know what you think of seeing the swatches like this. I was sent these swatch wheels, they're not really wheels, but from Beyond Polish, and I just wanted to test them out and see what you all think of them. That wraps up my swatches and comparisons for Cirque's new Falling in Lust collection. As always, I'd love to know what your thoughts are on this collection because overall, I really am a fan. Like, I love the new jellies that we got. Even though they're kind of dark for the season, they're still really cool, and I think definitely great shades that people can add into their collection. But I think I was just thrown off by the finishes because when I think of grunge or indie, I think of matte or metallic kind of shades. So not exactly what I was expecting, but still pretty cool either way. My main issue though is with their new wide brushes. So in case you missed it, Cirque is now offering replacement wide brushes that are sold in a pack of 5, but Cirque collections are 6 pieces. So that just really annoys me. I know for most people it's not that big of a deal because I'm sure most of the people who are buying the full collections are returning customers, and so they have a bunch of Cirque bottles that they can use those other replacement brushes for. So I guess it ends up working out, but I don't know, there's just something that bothers me about it not being the same exact number as the collection pieces. Aside from that, they retail for $6.50. So I think the cost per brush comes down to $1.30, which isn't that bad, especially when comparing it to brands like Holo Taco, which retail for like $1.60 per brush, or Zoya, which retails for $2 per brush. So in comparison to those two, Cirque is pretty decent with the price, but it really comes down to how many polishes you're looking to replace, because if you're gonna be replacing like a lot of polishes, then I would just recommend going with KB Shimmer because they sell replacement brushes for 33 cents a piece. So it's like a whole $1 cheaper. So I'm not really sure why there is such a discrepancy in the price. The main difference between the KB Shimmer brush and the Cirque wide brush is the cap color, where the KB ones are black, but they are virtually the same aside from the color. So I really hope that this wide brush replacement pack is just going to be a temporary thing for Cirque and that they are planning to permanently switch over to wide brushes in the future, because I think that just would be the better option. I think from what I've seen from a lot of people, they've just said that it just seems very money grabby for brands, not just Cirque, but Holo Taco, Zoya as well, to know that their customers want wide brushes, but to then sell them on the side. That also just creates a lot of waste, because then once we buy the wide brushes, we're throwing out a bunch of caps that didn't need to be thrown out in the first place. So yeah, overall, I really hope that that is a change that they are going to be making in the future, and fingers crossed that it's sooner than later. But yeah, I just don't really love that. But again, if you just have a smaller collection or something, you know, getting these wide brushes and adding them onto your order doesn't really affect you, I guess. So I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on that. Leave any thoughts that you have down below so we can chat about it. But thanks so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.